Sitting off a country road in rural Bibb County, Leanne Barton's friends wondered how their local girl died in such a brutal big city way.
I'm afraid there is a temptation for all of us, and that temptation is to become focused upon the horrific events of this past week. If we give in to that temptation, we do a great disservice and an injustice to Leanne.
Leanne's favorite color, purple, gave comfort to those still unbelieving of her death. Young Girl Scouts waited while parents signed them in. Under blistering skies, water flowed, and so did the tears. Outside speakers with a minister's soothing voice tried to answer some of the tough questions.
How do we go on from here? How can we bear the future knowing the pain of this loss is not over simply because the funeral has ended? I tell you that God gives you the opposite answer that Mark Barton sought in answer to his own personal pain.
27-year-old Leanne Barton saw her family last in the spring, and this is her final goodbye.
All day they came, at times whole families, others one by one, all finding it hard to believe what they'd see on the other side of these doors.
Everyone is just devastated that something like this could happen. We don't understand how there can be so much hate in a person who wants to control every situation that comes up.
According to Henry County Police, 11-year-old Matthew Barton's lifeless body was beaten about the head from a hammer, drowned, and left with a note penned by his father. It called the child his buddy. 8-year-old Michelle was found in the same way. Barton left a note calling her his sweetheart. In Barton's suicide letter, he described how he murdered both of his children before he tucked them in forever. Ironically, this note, police suspect was written by one of the children, was found at Mark Barton's former home. After the horrifying Buckhead killing spree and the murder of Barton's second wife and his own children, longtime family friend Bo Signius believes it could have all been prevented.
That should never have happened. But there should be a thorough investigation going back 5 or 6 years on the people in Alabama.
They began arriving early. No doubt the final goodbyes to the Barton children would bring hundreds to this funeral home in Lithia Springs. 11-year-old Matthew and 7-year-old Michelle were murdered last Wednesday in their Henry County home, the day after their mother, Leanne Barton, was also murdered. Investigators say they all died at the hands of Mark Barton, the children's father. The first string of murders that would eventually lead to the worst mass killing in Georgia's history. It was Thursday afternoon when 44-year-old Mark Barton walked into 2 brokerage firms in Buckhead and opened fire. He killed 9 people and wounded 13 others. It would be several hours before police found him in Ackworth.
He was pulled over and then killed himself. This brings this very tragic day to an end.
Investigators say the suspicions about Barton began years ago. He was also a prime suspect in the murder of his first wife, Deborah, and her mother. The 2 women were hacked to death in Alabama in 1993. Barton was never charged in that case. This afternoon, as the community pays its last respects to Barton's youngest victims, they're naturally honoring them all. The children will now be buried next to their mother and their grandmother. Their stepmother was buried yesterday. Reporting in Douglas County, Georgia, Angeline Correa. They began arriving early. No doubt the final goodbyes to the youngest victims in last week's deadly rampage would bring hundreds to this funeral home in Lithia Springs. Draping the caskets of the children, an American flag, and a blanket of pink roses. The pallbearers, members of the Children's Boy Scout and Girl Scout troops. 11-year-old Matthew and his sister, 8-year-old Michelle, were murdered last week by their father, 44-year-old Mark Barton. He killed the children and their stepmother, Leanne, in their Henry County home.
I hit them with a hammer in their sleep and then put them face down in the bathtub to make sure they did not wake up in pain.
The Henry County Police Chief shared the chilling details of Barton's note left behind at the crime scene. Today, he was one of many to carry in a symbol of condolences for the family. And as the community pays its last respects to Barton's youngest victims, it's naturally honoring all of them.
They're in a better place. God's going to take care of them. And like they said, God loves the little children.